90 or what, or is this a new initiative? I can't imagine this administration in Washington making this a high priority.
Yeah, that's why I noted on the Project Civic Access that there were actually a couple of agreements in 2018. Transition plans have been required since the ADA. When the ADA was adopted, they were required. The implementation date of that, I think, was a couple years after. However, there were never standards for sidewalks. So while sidewalks had been determined at some point to be a program that was covered, there was no definition of what was accessible or what wasn't accessible until 2011, when the PROWAG, the Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, were published, but they were, again, as draft. When they were published, though, FHWA, at least in this region, reached out to NYSDOT and you know, I don't know, strongly suggested or what, you know, they did, but NYSDOT, Valerie, feel free to interrupt me if I'm misspeaking on NYSDOT here. But NYSDOT does now, you know, has incorporated the PROWAG into the Highway Design Manual, so that's just required for anybody doing a federal aid project. FHWA then continued on doing trainings for local municipalities. I think in 2012, and a number of municipalities in our region attended that and became very concerned because they realized that they didn't have transition plans, you know, covering their pedestrian infrastructure, and that was going to be a really big lift to bring everything into compliance, especially for municipalities that have an old pedestrian network. So they requested from CDTC that we form this. We have an ADA working group to work on these issues, and as part of that, we kind of decided that it does just make sense to go with PROAG, because there's no evidence that PROAG is not going to be adopted. All evidence points to it being adopted, maybe with a few minor changes on a couple of things. So, you know, technically you could use something other than PROAG in your transition plan, but you should have a transition plan covering sidewalks. Does that answer your question?
Yep, fine.
And I just want to note that John Mitchell added, in addition to the ADA transition plans for people with trails that they're looking to make more accessible, there are upcoming Universal Trail Assessment Plan, UTAP trainings by Saratoga Plan on June 15th and June 29th. And there's a link in the chat box, but I'll also share that link with the advisory committee in the notes if you're interested.
Yeah, to clarify that, that's the online training element for the to get you ready to do the hands-on. There will be a hands-on training that follows up after that, but I don't have the information.
Hey, Carrie, this is Zach from the City of Albany. Is this on a continuous funding cycle? Like, does this appear every 3 or 5 years? I'm just thinking for us, like with municipal budgets kind of being in flux, we're being told not to spend any money basically on anything. So I think, you know, these are definitely improvements I think we want to see for the city. It's just without, you know, certainty on funding, I think it makes it a little bit difficult on our end to like plan ahead for that. So is there anything that this program kind of accounts for in situations like this? Sorry, that's a two-part question, but
I'll let me know if I don't answer all of the questions. There is no cash match required. We are, you know, requiring that somebody participate, at least, you know, there's some amount of effort on the part of the municipality going into the creation of the transition plan. The deadline is actually June 15th. This is the first time that we have done this. It's the first time that we've set aside planning funds to offer transition plan assistance. So, you know, I want to, I don't want to, I want to keep the deadline to try and get some of them done, because I think there's a risk of, if we don't do any now, that it appears that nobody's interested and that the funding get used for something else. But the internal plan in the office is that we're doing this year as a kind of as a test, but that we are planning to set aside funds in, you know, either next year, depending on how this year goes, or in 2 years. So the plan is that it will be not just this year, that it will be ongoing. But if it appears that there's no interest, that, you know, I don't want to make any promises, because it wouldn't horribly surprise me if that were to change. Rolling, so we are keeping the June 15th deadline, understanding what's going on right now. We are planning to open it again like early July. I think we could be ready on a rolling basis if we need to, but I did want to keep the June 15th. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I guess I was asking more about funding for goals for the actual transition plan. Are there certain requirements of?
For the changes that you're going to make once you're finished?
Yeah.
There's no requirement. You just have to show that you're making progress over time.
Okay.
Jen Vigiani asked, how many communities do we think we can support? We based this off of the number of miles that Niskayuna did over the summer and how much money they spent on it, which was with a summer intern, but it was a paid intern. And then we extrapolated that to be able to do at least 2. Hopefully worst case scenario with a large city, and then, you know, a pretty small municipality. So that would be, you know, in my mind, in terms of the number that we could do, worst case scenario is one of the large cities applies, then I think we'd be down to 2. But if they don't, and there's good applications from other municipalities that have smaller networks, then we can probably do, you know, just as a scale, it's mostly a scale thing with the number of miles of sidewalk infrastructure and other pedestrian infrastructure that the municipality has. Okay.
Any other questions for Carrie about the ADA transition plans? Nope. All right. So Carrie, thank you. And we'll send out again the link to the ADA transition plan application form in the notes. It was in the previous notes, and I believe it was linked to in the agenda. So if you're looking for it at this moment, you can find it there. And then we also posted the link right in the chat box if you scroll up a bit. So, all right. Thank you, Carrie. So now I'm going to try and share my screen so we can jump into the rest of our agenda. See if this works. Can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay, great. Okay. So we have several CDTC and I guess somewhat DOT related updates, and then some other updates that we wanted to provide to folks today. So just related to COVID and New York State on pause, as you all know, we are going through the phases of reopening. CDTC's office is still closed until June 15th. Oops. All of our public and in-person meetings, right now we're saying canceled through June 15th, but any sort of public meeting like these committee meetings will likely not be in person for quite some time, but CDTC staff is going to start returning to the office over the next couple of weeks on a very limited basis. So we'll keep everyone updated. But, you know, we encourage everyone, if you have questions, to reach out how you've been. You know, email is definitely best right now. So I've been showing these, the VMT data during the shutdown and the impact to traffic in the region. The most updated data is through mid-May, and as you can see, it did start to make a slight rebound, and we'll continue as we get access to this to monitor it and keep folks updated and see if some of these impacts are permanent or how long-term they are and what impact they have to our long-term transportation plans. And then also, I know some cities are trying to help businesses reopen by using sidewalk and street space that typically hasn't been used for cafes. And there are tools on the NACDO website for cities on how to do that. There are also tools for transit and for converting streets, not necessarily completely shutting them down, but making them slow streets that prioritize just walking, bicycling, recreation, just to create more space for people to be out in the street, because it's not just businesses that need to use some extra space and get out right now. So the Capital District Trails Plan, as most of you know, was released last year, and our new UPWP has a line item in there for implementing this plan. So we released a solicitation for feasibility studies, and we're making up to $75,000 available for a consultant-led feasibility study. So this doesn't mean that the study is capped at $75,000. It's, you know, if there is a 25% cash match required, but if a community wanted to overmatch for a larger study, that is definitely welcomed. And the purpose is to evaluate the feasibility of the core trails recommended in the plan. So this is just a map of those trails, but there is also a table within the plan that shows priority for implementation, and other criteria, such as being located in an EJ area, the potential demand, and other factors. So that is how we'll be evaluating and prioritizing studies for funding. We are giving municipalities quite a bit of time, just because we know that things are a little hectic right now and budgets are uncertain. So proposals must be submitted by August 7th. If you have any questions or if you have a proposal ready, please contact me. You have my email address, but it's also listed right there. And the feasibility studies need to be focused on these core trails or connecting to these core trails. So if you have any questions about that, still after reading the full solicitation, definitely let me know and I can talk to you about eligible types of studies and what actions are not eligible. So this is just a reminder that I think there was a question. Charles from Albany County Department of Health asked what the status of the Livingston Avenue Bridge is. We recently found out that there has been some movement on that, although it hasn't been announced what's happening publicly, but I think we will be seeing that kind of revisited. Is Carrie still on the line? Maybe not. Okay. But as we get more information on that, we'll update everyone. That is a very important piece of infrastructure to the region, and particularly with connecting the trail system. As a reminder, the New York State Greenways Plan is currently ongoing, and there is a survey at greenwaysplan.org that you can complete, and I encourage you to do so, and to promote that survey with your own contacts. So for New Visions 2050, last week our policy board did approve a final draft to go to the public, which I know that kind of seems silly because we haven't been able to do a ton of, we haven't been able to do the level of public participation that we had planned on because of COVID. So we have shifted our schedule, and we are kind of changing the way that we're approaching New Visions. So we're going to be doing continuous public involvement just through September, when we expect our policy board to approve a final plan. And even though we're expected to approve a final plan in September, we, based on everything that's going on and changing, you know, potentially having to even change metrics within the plan, we are, you know, this is going to be a living document that we continually revisit, and that we may just continually make updates to. And we're going to continue even beyond September, doing outreach and education with the public on what the long range plan is and what the long range plan means for the region as far as building and investing in infrastructure. So, as you know, most of our materials are available online right now. And we're also working on trying to reach people who do not have reliable internet access. We've set up a virtual voicemail box that you can call and leave a voicemail comment or message, or you can text a comment. That number is on this flyer, text or call 518-618-2498. So we're trying to get flyers out to any organization that is still having, you know, some in-person, some face-to-face contact with people. If you would like flyers, please let me know and we will print them and I can deliver them to you safely. We don't need to be in contact, but however you feel comfortable, I can drop them off. And we're going to be doing virtual town halls and continuing to do outreach through social media and other means as we can. So we're also collecting applications for complete streets workshops. Those are due right now on June 19th. Just like the ADA transition plans, if we don't get enough applications, we may open it back up and just accept applications on a rolling basis. But all of this information is on our website, and there is a link to the application form. We talked about the ADA transition plans, but this is just a reminder that they're due June 15th, and you can find the information and application form on our website. As far as linkage, you all received the update to the linkage plans table, but the Albany Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan is currently collecting public comment. So I encourage you to visit the project website link. Zach, if you're still on and want to, you know, mention anything in particular, you're welcome to do so.
Yep, sorry about that. I'm just going to copy the link for the website and I'm going to put that in the chat box. And then I'm also going to put the dates and times and then the Zoom registration links. We're doing 6 neighborhood meetings and we're doing it based on clusters of neighborhoods. So if you, oh, it's not letting me do that. If you live or work in the city of Albany, feel free to attend whichever meetings make the most sense for you. Because we know, yeah, so I'm going to do this slowly, unfortunately, but I'll put all the neighborhood meetings in and I don't want to take up too much more time, but
Okay.
Feel free to join the meeting that makes the most sense for you.
Thanks, Zach. Rima, if you're on, do you want to give any, is there any additional information on the Hoosick Hillside study?
Hi, the plan is being drafted.
Okay.
once we have a full draft, we have a partial draft and it's getting vetted through New York DOT. Once it's gone through that process and we have a full draft, then we'll be going back to the public to present the alternatives and recommendations and get feedback. And the public participation structure has not been determined yet. We're sort of kicking that can down the road and waiting until we have a draft, seeing what the environment is like in terms of meeting it face to face before we figure out how we're going to be moving forward with that.
Okay. Thanks, Rima.
Yep.
So this table, you probably can't really see it. So I'm going to send this out with the notes, but it is the TIP project status spreadsheet. So it just provides information on projects that are on the TIP and where they're at. I know this is something people ask about pretty often, and CDTC has really improved and expanded its tracking process. Some projects of note that maybe as you've been out and about, you've noticed progress on, but I think are worth noting are the Menands connection. The DOT's project to the Mohawk Hudson Bike Hike Trail is really moving along pretty quickly. Also, the Zim Smith Trail extension is their construction is near completed. We actually got some really great aerial photos of the construction and progress, which are included in our soon to be released newsletter. And then, of course, the South End Bikeway link in Albany, that first phase of construction seems to be near completion. It looks really great. It's an on-road, separate protected bike lane and then partial trail. So those are all moving along in addition to a bunch of other projects. As far as the Capital Coexist mini grants, as many of you know, some of the proposed projects included public events, which, it's up to that project sponsor whether or not they want to move forward with it, but we wanted to give sponsors the ability to change the scope of their project because of current ongoing events. So we have given sponsors the choice to either rescope the project, to do something that supports social distancing, or reschedule for a later date. They could also just back out of their grant for this year and then reapply next year and get priority for funding, or roll the mini grant over to next year with the same proposal and funding amount, but they cannot apply for a new mini grant. So that is how that program is moving forward right now, given that we are still unable to have large public gatherings. We're having some trouble with APBP in getting access to the webinars for public viewing, but we are trying to keep working with APBP. As you know, we purchased these and there's a limited license issue, so we're going to continue working on that. I already talked to, yeah, well, this is a bigger, I guess, picture of the TIP project status tracker, but there's multiple pages and I'm going to include this in an attachment to the notes. So I think the last thing I wanted to talk about, because I think there has been a lot of discussion, particularly within transportation planning in the last couple of weeks, about the safe streets and open streets movement and just transportation planning, particularly bike ped planning, and how it has, as well-intentioned as planning and these projects have been, in some cases have helped kind of perpetuate racism and disparities and inequality. And I think it's interesting that streets have been used, at least symbolically, in the last couple of weeks as, a place where people are out and asking for change. So these are just ideas. I think in planning, we sometimes think that it's a very technical profession and our job is just to collect data and repeat best practices and guidelines. But planning, and when we talk about spaces and streets, is always about people and it affects people. And I think it's just really important to remember that we need to center planning ideas and our recommendations around people and think more broadly on how some of them are impacting certain groups. So just some questions is, how do certain transportation planning ideas perpetuate inequality and racism? And what are we doing to make sure all bodies are safe while using streets to move? Often we talk about, again, I'm going to go back to bike ped planning. We talk about things like limiting biking on sidewalks, which we know is important for improving pedestrian safety, but sometimes we inadvertently put other people, more vulnerable people, at risk of being, having laws enforced kind of inequitably. So this is just an example of down in New York City of where bicycling on the sidewalk summonses are mostly issued. And then also remembering, as we advocate for expanding sidewalks and adding infrastructure for walking and bicycling, that there are still a lot of communities that have sidewalks that are in really bad condition or not well connected to really important facilities like our parks and trails or like job centers, and are not perceived as safe places to walk or bike, depending upon where you live. And then, of course, we know, the decision makers are, not all communities are represented in decision making. In planning, we see definitely planning is not a super diverse field. I think it is changing, particularly, when you look at people who are registered in graduate planning programs right now, it is becoming more diverse. But I think making sure that there are diversity in voices at all the tables is really important. And I don't think that that is always the case, even in the capital region. And then similarly for engineering. So these are just questions to consider. This is going to be an ongoing conversation, I'm sure. I don't have answers. And of course, I recognize that I personally, as a planner, and particularly doing bicycle and pedestrian planning in the region, have a lot more work to do and can improve for sure. So when we talk about complete streets and things being safe for all, what is missing from our definition for all? Who is not in the room from your company, your organization, or community that needs to be part of this conversation? Have you institutionalized equity at your company or organization, or have you just hired or partnered with it? This is something at CDTC that we're trying to be better at, looking at everything through an equity lens instead of just an add-on, instead of just doing something and say, well, now we're going to add an equity piece to it, but just everything being looked at through the equity lens. Who do you welcome in that you have been holding back because of the accountability you will be then responsible for? And where do you see opportunities to co-empower a community leader or advocacy partner to lead? So we've talked about how in bicycle and pedestrian planning, some professionals have suggested that the 3 E's, that there's another 3 E's or a new 3 E's. And I think that these 3 E's kind of help center more people. So we've talked about this before, ethics, equity, and empathy. When we're doing planning, when we're looking at design alternatives, we have an ethical obligation to develop solutions that improve the safety, health, and welfare of the public so that few of our roadways are dangerous by design. And then equity, of course, we have opportunities as professionals to either dismantle or perpetuate inequities, and we must recognize them and act accordingly. And empathy. So being sure not to overlook the needs of the people our work is meant to serve, and being human-centered when doing planning and engineering. So again, I'm sure we'll continue this discussion, and I do hope that we continue to make progress. I think that we have definitely been improving in this realm, but we still have a lot of work to do. I think that there are some really good examples that should serve as a model as we do new planning studies. I think we talked about the Craig and Main study in Schenectady as being a really great model for community involvement and getting really meaningful planning recommendations out of it. Nate Owens from Bethlehem pasted a link. It says this organization has good resources for governments looking to become more equitable. I had put some, see if I have them in this. Yes, some resources which I sent out in the email that are just, I think they're really worth reading and thinking about as we continue to either plan for walking and bicycling, advocate for walking and bicycling, or, work within these communities that are still, despite what we build, still may not feel safe out moving in the street or on the sidewalks or on our trails. Okay, so the next item in the agenda, Lindsay from CDTA has joined us today, and she is going to give us an update on CDPHP cycle. Lindsay, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. Sorry. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so we are very anxious to get the bikes out on the road. We've gotten a lot of questions and people reaching out asking if we are going to put them out this season with everything going on with the coronavirus pandemic. We are planning to put bikes out, and very soon. We just really have taken our time, had a lot of conversations with our partners at CPHP. I worked very closely with our operations team to put together a strategic, intelligent plan on how we can do this safely, make sure that all of our members are safe, make sure our operations team is safe, and just do everything the right way. We talked to a lot of our partners and other bike share systems around the country, specifically out in Niagara Falls and Buffalo. They actually expanded their system right in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. So we had some really good conversations with their marketing team and kind of the messaging that they put forth to their members and the people who were interested in their bike share system. And we think that we're going to have bikes out on the road, certainly at some point this month. We think as soon as within 2 weeks, if all goes according to plan. We built a very comprehensive cleaning and sanitizing procedure that our operations team is going to follow in the shop, in the vans, and out in the system at the bikes and the bike racks. We are going to have 4-ounce bottles of hand sanitizer zip tied to the baskets on the bikes for riders to use before and after their rides. We also we're going to have small index card sized index cards, basically, with just some safe riding reminders. Use the hand sanitizer. If you're sick, don't ride a bike, stay 6 feet apart, those kind of things. But that's going to be zip tied to the handlebars, just as a reminder for riders. We're also going to put signage on our bike racks, reiterating the same things that the index cards are saying, and just saying that our operations team is following very strict cleaning and sanitizing procedures in order to make this program go this season. We're going to be phasing bikes out very slowly. We're not going to put our entire fleet out on the road at this time. The main reason for that is we're going to strategically place them where people are able to access right now. So the first locations, I think that we've kind of played around with where we should put them first, and we kind of set up like a phased plan almost. We initially thought maybe doing essential locations, grocery stores, hospitals, those kind of places. But the more we're talking about it, we think maybe we're going to do parks and trails, more of a recreational focus for our phase 1. Probably put 60 to 75 bikes out in the 5 municipalities where we normally have them. We've talked to our municipal partners. We've had direct conversations with city officials, city leadership, to get their okay. We've presented them with our cleaning and sanitation plan. Make sure they're on board with it, they're okay with it. Tell them the locations that we've been thinking about putting bikes at. We have assured them that we are going to put our bikes 50% of the racks full so that there's enough space between each rack location for folks to come to and keep that 6 feet of social distancing space. We're encouraging people to wear masks when they ride the bikes, just to follow all the procedures and protocols that we've all been doing overall in life with this COVID-19. So, like I said, we're hoping June 22nd is our tentative target date to start putting some bikes on the road. And that's where we're at. It's been a very long process, like I said, but we really wanted to take our time and make sure that CDPHP was completely behind us. They put their support with us, that we were going to do this the correct way and the smart way. And we think that we're ready, and we're hoping that we get some ridership. We think that we will. In talking to our other bike share partners, and everybody's seen these articles, riding bikes is what everybody wants to be doing right now. So we think that once we put our bikes on the road, as popular as they are on their own, being an outlet for people to use and enjoy some exercise and some free time outside, we think we're going to have a successful season amid everything else that's going on. So that's our update right now. So a couple of weeks, you'll see us out there again. All things considered, it'll be a successful season.
Thanks, Lindsay. I know we've heard from some of the bike rescues in the region that, in addition to the bike shops not being able to keep products and get bikes to people that want them, the bike rescues, they were focusing on getting bikes to essential workers and getting tons of bikes out, and now are starting to get calls from people who just can't, they're trying to purchase bikes and they can't even get one. So yeah, biking is, I even heard my neighbors who, talk about how they wanted to dust off their old bikes and start biking more. So
yeah, exactly.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. So our next meeting, again, it will be by Zoom. It's scheduled for July 14th. There are a lot of different programs and stuff going on right now and projects going on in the region that I'm trying to get on the schedule for presentation. So I think we'll have a good presentation again in July. If people want to either type in an update or just go around quickly, if you have something that you'd like to share or update the group on, please unmute yourself and do so.
So I can share. This is Rima Shmia at CDTC. Just a really quick, the Pledge to Ride concluded last Friday. There were 129 total pledges. I'm going to be getting out a survey later this week and doing the social media raffle and wrapping up that project, and I'll be reporting on it in more detail at the next meeting.
Thanks, Rima.
Bikatoga is up and running shortly with their workshop. We've got a COVID manual, and we've got instructions on how to proceed safely for everyone involved, both workers and participants, people looking to adopt a bike or get a bike. Our film festival was successful. Hopefully most of you got to see it. If you haven't seen it yet, you can still see it by going to our website or Cafe Lina's. It was a pretty good success for our first effort, 300 views to date. So we feel pretty good about that for a kind of quick fill and effort. And I think that's it. Several of our members have ridden on the new and completed Zim Smith Trail from Coons Corner down into Mechanicville. And we love the golf tunnel, we're calling it. What the heck? The tunnel that they have to protect the bike riders with the fencing that became this big, it's like a tunnel. It's really cool. But it was fun. It's nice. And I think that's it for Bikatoga. Oh, no, one other thing. We are creating a challenge, Biketoga challenge, mostly for locals and visitors, kind of earning a badge or some sort of reward for finishing up several hikes, walks through town, or bike rides. We're just in the we're forming that now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette.
Jason Kemper in Boston Spa advises that the Zim Smith has been paved from Coons Crossing up to Round Lake. I've only ridden about half that length, and it's in excellent condition. So Zim Smith has been improved in lots of ways.
I rode from Saratoga to Mechanicville on the completely, well, from my house to the Zim Smith Trail at Route 67 where Stewart's is, and then from there to Mechanicville. It's awesome. Very much appreciated. So happy to not be on Route 67.
Tina, were you trying to talk? I can't hear you. Maybe if you,
Okay, can you hear me now?
yeah.
Okay, yeah, I told my colleague that if I put my headphones on, nobody could hear me, but she thought it would still work through my laptop. So just there's a lot of progress on Geyser Trail, which is really exciting. And when you were talking about the drone footage on for the Zim Smith, I was thinking that would be a great opportunity to do something for the Geyser Trail as well, just to show some of the progress. The city's also been progressing on our Missing Links sidewalk project that we received funding for from the DOT. And at this time, I believe all the surveying has been completed for that. So that's going to be really exciting. City's very excited to have the bike share bikes back. I've been speaking to a lot of other communities outside the region who have bike share bikes. They've been getting a ton of usage. And one of the other ones that I just wanted to put out there was one of the real needs I feel right now is to get bike and ped counters up for some of these trails and some of these sidewalks to really show the need for those connections and those points right now. And it would be nice to have some type of, maybe in Saratoga County, if there's any other communities, to do something similar to what Albany did with their kind of complete street. What do you call it, Jen? It's like the all the toolkit that people get to be able to use.
The lending library.
Yeah, the lending
Yeah.
library. I don't know if there'd be an opportunity for a regional lending library or a Saratoga County lending library, but to start putting things together, such as bike counters that communities can use when, we're really trying to show what's going on in our community and really prove the value of these resources. That's about all I have.
Yeah.
So if anybody has an idea on that, please get in touch with me.
I should have mentioned that, so CDTC has been coordinating with Parks and Trails New York, who is trying to get some of their unused eco counters out to at least some trails right now to see, how use has been impacted. And we have been at CDTC trying to get counts done during the week, just, out there doing manual counts. If there is anyone that is interested in volunteering to do a 2-hour count, I have all the materials. I'd be happy to give them to you. And if you give them to me, I'll do all the analysis to get the numbers out. So we are, building a continuous broad counting program is something that the bike ped program at CDTC has set like a goal of doing. So we haven't done it fast enough for this hit, and now it's super important. So we are trying to do counts as we can. If there is, Tina, a specific location that if a town or city needs a count at, please let me know, send me an email in private, and we can coordinate getting staff out to do some counts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll reach out to you because
Okay.
I'm willing to do it. But I don't know if anybody from any of the other communities, but there have been complaints that have reached all the way to the governor's level in our community about some areas where there is just not any social distancing going on. People are concerned about the numbers of people. So
Yeah, I know there are some, like on the region level and then also on the state level, different agencies that are trying to, do something to help the communities for social distancing. So hopefully we'll see maybe some sort of assistance available soon that does that for communities. So I'll keep everyone updated as that moves along.
So Tina's coming at counting people from the other direction with the virus, talking about social distancing versus making the case that people are using trails and sidewalks the other way, right?
No, I'm actually advocating for both sides. I think if we show how much they're getting used, it absolutely shows how much more we need to build out. Yeah, I mean, we did receive, the funding for the mini grant. And so, I need to reach out to public safety. I've been trying to figure out, because we have been having people, I don't know if this is happening in other communities, but as everybody was saying, you've seen people on your bikes that have never been on your bike before, how we can do better training, especially for children. I'm seeing children actually ride bikes in my neighborhood whose parents never allowed them to, because I live in the city, never allowed them out before. And I'm seeing smaller children like out on bikes and just figuring out how we can do better bike skill training for children so that they're safe out there.
Absolutely. And when you talk about lending libraries and toolkits and counters, are you talking about people counters or devices? Do you have those that you can make available?
As Jen said, like the eco counter, that would be a device that you could put out. The really nice expensive ones actually can differentiate between bike and ped, so you can really get a count of both types of users.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are also examples of some communities using, they call them deer cameras. Cameras where they collect the video data. And then I know that there's software that can then, they run through the video and can extract the numbers and data. So
Unmanned, yeah.
Yeah, the
The
deer
unmanned.
counters are very inexpensive, but it's the back end.
it's more work.
Yeah, it's a lot more work.
Does anyone else have an update that they want to share?
Hi, this is Zach Powell from the City of Albany again, just as a quick update, just to kind of piggyback on your presentation, Jen. We are doing the neighborhood meetings. And in addition to that, we're also trying to do focus groups with populations that are usually underrepresented during planning processes. So that can be communities of color, people under the age of 18 or over 65, people who don't have access to a car, people with disabilities. So if anyone knows of any organizations or communities that we should be reaching out to in addition to those neighborhood meetings, feel free to contact me. And I'd be happy to work with organizations, groups to set up focus groups to talk more about the plan and kind of current issues within the city.
Okay. All right. So with that, we will be sending notes and copies of the presentation and everything out to everyone, so that, and hopefully we can answer everyone's questions that were asked. Thank you all for participating today, and we will see you again in July. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone. Great info.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Leave.
Yeah.